Good morning. Guys, would you mind?
Oh shit.
Right, today, what I'd like to do is talk about the past perfect simple. So another tense. This is the last one of the past tenses. After this, we'll also cover the future tenses, and then we're done with the tenses. Then we're also done with the course anyway. So the last past tense today. That's the past perfect simple. Actually, the past perfect simple and the past perfect continuous. We'll do today. Right. This is not the past perfect simple, but a tense that looks like the past perfect simple. I'd like to give you 1 minute to figure out what tense is this and what does it mean. And then we'll see how it links up to the past perfect simple. I'll give you 1 minute to think about what tense is this and what does it mean that we use this tense. The babysitter has put the children to bed. Good morning. Right. The babysitter has put the children to bed. Any volunteers? What tense is this, and what does it mean that we use this tense? Anyone? Can you tell me what tense is this? The babysitter has put the children to bed.
Can't speak with my mouth full.
Well, you can, because I'm hearing you speak.
It's past simple.
It's not past simple. Yeah?
Present perfect?
Present perfect. Present perfect. Has is present, and put is the past tense, so present perfect. Yeah? Can anyone tell? Yeah?
It's a situation starting in the past that continues till now.
Situation that started in the past and continues till now. That's a rule for the present perfect. I would say in this case the evidence is still visible. Yeah?
Oh, they're still in bed.
It's still evidence. So the babysitter is still there, and it's really quiet in the house. Yeah? That's the evidence. Remember, what we said about the present perfect. This is something that happened in the past, recently, it has a link to the present. So here, the babysitter, she put the children to bed, but you can still see the evidence, and there's a link to the present. It's important to remember the different tenses we talked about, otherwise it becomes really hard to understand other tenses as well. There's a specific order that we cover the tenses. So if you remember what the present perfect was like, then you'll remember, then it'll be much easier for you to understand the past perfect. So this is the present perfect. The babysitter has put the children to bed. I said the present perfect is a past activity or event or situation with a link to the present. Yeah? And you can see the evidence. The children are in bed. So there's evidence in the present. Remember, that's what we said for the present perfect. So the basic rule for the present perfect was action or a situation in the past with a link to the present. I hope you still remember this. This is always a recent usually a recent activity of which evidence is still visible, or something that started in the past and continues till now. Yeah? Okay, so here are two sentences. The babysitter has put the children to bed. That's the one we just looked at in the present perfect. Now look at the second one. When we came home, the babysitter had put children to bed. This looks very similar, doesn't it? Very similar to the present perfect. The first one's the present perfect. I said the recent activity which evidence is still visible. The second one is very similar, but it's not has put, but had put. In Dutch we would say had. How do you translate put? Gestopt, had gestopt, ja. Gebracht, had gebracht. Ze had de kinderen naar bed gebracht.
Ja, maar dat is geen bed.
Yeah, so she had put the children to bed. This is what we call the past perfect, not the present perfect, the past perfect. The present perfect starts with has, which is in the present tense, and then a perfect tense put. Has put, present perfect. The past perfect starts with had, which is past tense, and then a perfect. Past perfect, had put. Right, so this is what we call the past perfect. As you can see on the picture, this is the past tense, and the past perfect is even further in the past. I'll explain to you how that works. But bear in mind that the past perfect, today's topic, is very similar to the present perfect. So if you still remember your notes in the present perfect, then you'll understand the past perfect much better. When we came home, the babysitter had put the children to bed. This is the past perfect simple. And the basic rule sounds not so basic, but rather complicated, but it's not so complicated as you think, because I'll explain to you. I said the present perfect simple is an action in the past with a link to the present, right? The past perfect simple is an action or situation in the distant past, so really far away in the past, with a link to a more recent past. Now if you look at the timeline at the top, the dot, the large blue dot, that's a distant past. That's a past perfect simple. The distant past, right, really far away in the past. It links to a more recent past, across. That's an event that happened not so long ago. This becomes clearer once you see the examples I'm going to give you. We can also say the past perfect is linked to the past simple, just like the present perfect is linked to the present. I said the present perfect has a link to the present, always. Either because evidence is still visible, or is still continuing, etc. The past perfect is exactly the same. It also has a link, not to the present, but to the past. So, the rule for the past perfect simple is an action or situation in the past with a link to a more recent past, and when I give you more examples it becomes clearer. Before I come to a question, and then you could say the past perfect is linked to the past simple, just like the present perfect links to the present. Tim?
So in this sentence, the babysitter having put the children to bed links to when they came home.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was going to show you that. But exactly. When you come home, that's in the past, and the babysitter had put the children to bed, that's the evidence you see when you came up, you saw when you came home. Right? You're talking now, it's now long ago, there's no evidence anymore, but when you came home, there was evidence of her having put the children to bed. Another question?
But do you have to have two time notations in the same sentence to use this?
That's what you usually do, but not always in the same sentence. When you're telling a story, that's not necessarily what happens. Yeah? So here's an example, which hopefully explains what I mean. I'm speaking now, that's in the present. Then some time ago, in the past simple, we came home. That's past simple, remember? We came home. That's quite some time ago. But when we came home, there was evidence that the babysitter had put the children to bed. Compare this to the present perfect simple. So the first one, she had put the children to bed when we came home. And when we came home, she put the children to bed. I said, I'm speaking now. That's in the present. But in the past, it happened that one night we came home, and then we found evidence that she had put the children to bed. Right? This was an action that happened before that, a link to the time when we came home. Here is the timeline for the present perfect simple, which hopefully shows you how the two relate. She has put the children to bed is something that you say now. When I'm coming home now, I can say, she's put the children to bed. She has put the children to bed. This happened really recently. I can see the evidence now in the present. Here, I can't see the evidence in the present. I'm telling the story in the present. But what I'm saying is, there was a time in the past when we came home when we saw the evidence. So this one, I come home now, and I can see the babysitter has put the children to bed. Maybe in 5 weeks' time, I'll tell the same story again, but then it will be the past perfect. Right? 5 weeks ago, we came home, and the babysitter had put the children to bed. Then I wouldn't say she has put the children to bed. The babysitter had put the children to bed. So right now, I'm coming home, and I can see it's really quiet. I can say, the babysitter has put the children to bed. In 2 weeks' time, I'll say, 2 weeks ago, I came home, and the babysitter had put the children to bed. Right? So this is a more distant past. Any questions? I hope your looks are not confused, but still trying to wake up. So the bottom one is the present perfect. That just happened. The past perfect didn't just happen. It happened long ago. Yes?
So the words has and had, they are actually the indicators.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So the past perfect has the same meaning as when you say in Dutch, ze had de kinderen op bed gelegd. Yeah? That's not a recent past, it's a very distant past. Ze had de kinderen op bed gelegd. Of ik was, is what you say in Dutch as well. Ik was naar school geweest. Toen het gebeurde. Yeah? This one, the past perfect simple, is quite often used, is very often used in stories about the past. So when you're writing a story about the past, you'll use the past perfect very often because your story is already set in the past, like yesterday or last week, and you want to say what had happened before that. Then you use the past perfect for the thing that happened earlier. Okay, having said that, here are 2 rules. We use the past perfect to talk about an earlier action in the past. An earlier action in the past. And the earlier action means I'm talking about the past, when we came home. But something had happened before that. That's the earlier action. Something happened before I came home. That's the earlier action, and that action has to be put in the past perfect. When we came home, the babysitter had put the children to bed. And the had put to bed is an earlier action. It happened before another action. And the earlier action is the blue spot. The later action is the blue cross. We also use the past perfect to give reasons for past actions, feelings, etc. I was at home because I was in hospital because I had an accident. Had gehad. Yeah, that's fine. I had an accident. Yeah, so you want to explain why you're in hospital? Well, because why you were in hospital, I was in hospital because I had an accident. I couldn't do my homework because I had been ill in some way. Any questions? No more questions? I hope it's starting to sink in now, but at least some of you. We'll do an exercise and then I'll go back to the instructions to make sure you'll get it. Okay. So, here are two sentences. When we arrived, the film started. When we arrived, the film had started. I'd like you to spend 1 minute to discuss what is the difference between these two sentences. When we arrived, the film started. When we arrived, the film had started.
When we arrived, and it just when we arrived, it's more distant. And he gave the example. The babysitter had and then he gave the example. When we came, the babysitter had so we had already this is what I just
Okay. When cinema arrived, the lesson started, or when cinema arrived, the lesson had started. What's the difference? Anyone? Any volunteers? Yes.
With the first sentence, as they arrive, the film starts. With the second one, they arrive, but the film had already started, so they were too late.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Beware of the test. If you explain it, make sure you don't explain it in the. It's very easy to explain something in the terms of the tenses. That's no good explanation, of course, but you're quite right. But when on the test you say, "Oh, the second one means you arrived and then the film had started," well, then you say exactly what the sentence says. Yeah. But I'm saying this not because you're wrong, but because this happens all the time in the test. People explain things like the present continuous. I'm walking now. What does it mean? It means you're walking now. Yeah, it's really easy to explain things in the terms of tenses.
So with the first sentence, you can say two things are happening at the same time.
I'll explain to you. The first one means when you arrive, immediately afterwards the film starts. So these are two consecutive actions. You come in, as you come in, the film starts. Right? They happen immediately after each other. That's what we call consecutive. Opeenvolgend. They happen immediately after each other. The second one means when we arrived, the film had started. It means first the film starts and then you arrive. So you're late. You've missed the beginning of the film. Yeah? Tim?
On the test, would you be able to answer this question by drawing a timeline?
No.
Okay.
You'd have to explain it. Yeah. Yeah. Because we want you to be able to explain things in words to your students.
sense.
Yeah? Okay. So bear in mind, 2 times past simple means 2 consecutive actions. 2 actions that closely follow each other. Past simple and past perfect means one happens first and then the other one happens. Yeah? First the film starts and then you arrive.
If you would say when we arrived, the film was starting, is that in between them?
That would mean when we arrived the film was starting, it would mean they were trying to start at the film. I wouldn't necessarily say the film was starting because it's like a continuous action. I would only say that when it required effort to start the film. Maybe the computer, the screen was having difficulties or something. Yeah. Or there was a really long beginning and it was just starting. Yeah, you could say that. Right. Here's an exercise, and I hope when you do this it becomes clearer. First 4 sentences, give the rules, and the last 2 they're wrong, so correct them and explain explain your correction, and bear in mind what in these sentences happened first. Yeah? So please look again at these rules. An earlier action in the past and to give reasons for past actions or feelings. These are the 2 rules. Apply them to the first 4 sentences and then correct the last 2 with your explanation.
Sentences, but the rules.
Okay, let's discuss the exercise. When John came in, the lesson had already started. What's the rule here, Busen? What's the rule here for the first sentence? When John came in, the lesson had already started. Hello, miss.
I'm not really sure, but I had an earlier action.
Hello, sir.
An earlier action in the past. And you're quite right. And what's the earlier action here? Yeah, the lesson had already started. That's the thing that happened first. That's the earlier action. Okay? So an action that, another rule that would be, or another way to say that would be, an action that happened before another action in the past.
So you could not say an action interrupted by another.
No, it's not an action interrupted by another action. No. The lesson was going on when he entered. That would be an interrupted action. Yeah? Yes?
You have to state that it was in the past?
Yes.
Because there's a rule in the book. Oh yeah, it says that you can use the past perfect to show which action happened first.
Yeah, but then you have to say an action that happened. You still have to say it in the past. Yeah. Yeah, just to make sure you understand that it's in the past. Yeah? So an earlier action in the past. Had already started is earlier, yes?
Yes.
What did you want to say?
But they're all, like, they all have the same rule.
You're quite right. You could say they all have the same rule. That's why I gave the basic rule. Yeah. But for 2, there's an additional rule you could give. Namely, I didn't join them in the restaurant because I had already had lunch. This is an explanation of why you couldn't be in the restaurant, or why you didn't want to be in the restaurant, because you had already had lunch. So this one is an explanation of what was the rule? To give reasons for past actions and feelings. Yeah? So you're giving a reason for the fact that you didn't join them in the restaurant because you had already had lunch. Yeah? Of course, the lunch happened before the restaurant event. but you're also here giving a reason. Number 3, the child broke the toy that her grandmother had bought for her. What's the rule here, Daniela?
To talk about an earlier action in the past.
Exactly, to talk about an earlier action in the past. What's the earlier action here?
That the grandmother bought.
Yeah, her grandmother had bought for her. Ja. Ja. In Dutch would say, het kind brak het speelgoed dat haar oma voor haar had gekocht. Ja? So past perfect sounds complicated maybe in English, but it's one of the few tenses that corresponds to Dutch actually. Yeah? In Dutch we would also say dat haar oma voor haar had gekocht. Toen John binnenkwam was de les al begonnen. Was begonnen. It's past perfect. Yeah? The police arrested the boy because he had robbed a bank is Ez, maybe you can try this.
Oh, it's
Ez. Yeah.
it's an older action because
Yeah.
he robbed the bank and then he got arrested.
Yeah, so that's another action, but here you also want to give a reason for why he was arrested. Oops. For why he was arrested.
So it's a reason.
Yeah, so give reasons for past actions. Yeah? Why was he arrested? Because he had robbed a bank. Yeah, but also had robbed a bank is also an earlier action, that's also correct. Yeah. What's incorrect in number 1 and number 2? What's incorrect in number 1? Yes.
He had stolen a fortune.
And why should it be he had stolen a fortune?
Because he first stole a fortune and then he got
Exactly. He first stole the fortune and then he was in prison. So the action that happens first has to be in the past perfect. My dad was in prison because he had stolen a fortune. Yeah? And number 2, what's incorrect here and what should it be? Anyone else? Yes?
Had slept in as a child.
Yeah. I slept in the bed that my mother had slept in as a child. Why would you say had slept?
Because his mother slept in before him.
Yeah, exactly. That was the earlier action. Yeah. Yes?
So past perfect is basically if there's another past tense in the sentence and you want to show that it's even older than
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I slept in the bed that my mother had slept in as a child. She first slept. That happened before that, and then you sleep in the bed. Yeah? So an earlier action. So if I go back to this again. She had put the children to bed. That happens first, and then you come home. Right? When we came home, she had put the children to bed. Both are in the past tense, but the had put happened before the other one. So it's even further in the past, the distant past. And I said you can compare this to the present perfect. The past perfect is 2 past actions, and one happened before the other one. The present perfect is 1 past action and a present action. And the past action links to the present. Right? There's a link to the present. When you come home, the babysitter has put the children to bed. There's evidence of that. And the same goes to the past perfect. When the babysitter had, when we came home, the babysitter had put the children to bed. You could see the evidence in the past. Yeah? So bear in mind, the basic rule is, I'll just show you these. The basic rule is 2 actions in the past and 1 happened before that, and there's always a link between the 2. Yeah, they're never separate. Either because you want to give reasons, because there's evidence, or because it was still going on, etc. Any questions? No? I hope by now it's slightly clearer what the past perfect is. We'll have a break first and then I'll continue with the past perfect continuous. There we go. Okay, for the sake of the camera I'll go back. So this is 2 sentences and what's the difference, right? Okay, I said present perfect simple and present perfect continuous, and you have a desperate question or a remark.
I have an answer.
You have an answer. Wow.
The first difference is, in the first sentence you can see the evidence, right?
Yeah, in the first sentence you can see the evidence, yes. In the second sentence,
You cannot see the evidence.
No, it's continuous.
there's also evidence because she looks tired, right? But it's a different kind of evidence. The first one focuses on the fact that this is finished. This is over and done with. The children are in bed and it's now quiet. The second one, there's also evidence, but not because it's finished. They might still not be in bed because she has been putting them to bed, but it was so difficult she didn't succeed, and now she's really tired. Yeah? Not necessarily that's what it means, but you're not saying this is finished in the second one. You're only saying it took her a lot of effort. That's why she's so tired. That's because the continuous tense, we said in the previous lecture, this is no new information. The continuous tense always puts a focus on the action itself. That is to say, you want to emphasize how hard it was, how difficult, how long it took, how interesting it was maybe. Now you're focusing on the action itself. So you use the continuous to say how hard it was or how long it took, etc. You're zooming in on the action, as it were, of putting the children to bed. So you can actually picture her putting the children to bed all the time. Maybe she's finished, maybe not, you don't know. The first one you definitely know she's now finished. The children are in bed. The second one, you don't know that. That's not what you want to say. What you want to say is, she has been putting the children to bed. She must be really tired. Right? It was really hard. Okay. As I said, this is repetition from a previous lecture. Now let's compare this to the past perfect. The babysitter had put the children to bed. That's the sentence we've been looking at. You can also say she had been putting the children to bed. Now, we're not talking about the present perfect simple or the present perfect continuous. We're talking about the past perfect simple and the past perfect continuous. And they have exactly the same rules, but only further in the past. So here again, you're focusing on the action of putting to bed, but this is further in the past. Why did she look so tired? Well, she had been putting the children to bed. This is exactly the same as she has been putting the children to bed, but only further in the past, in a more distant past. Yeah, so you're zooming in on the action again for the past perfect continuous. Any question? Hez?
So the only difference is actually between the past and the present is using has or had.
Yeah, yeah, and the difference in meaning then is it's further in the past. Yeah. So if we look at the timeline here, there's two rules for the past perfect continuous that we want you to learn. So remember, I'm giving you the basic idea of a tense, and then the rules that belong to that tense are sort of are more detailed descriptions of that rule, that basic idea. Yeah. So we used to use the past perfect continuous to talk about. Looks complicated. That's why I use the colours to indicate it has three different aspects. We talk about continuing past actions. Continuing past actions, ongoing past actions. That's why it's continuous. Before another past action or time. That's the same with the past perfect. Past perfect simple, I mean. But here you're emphasizing time. You're emphasizing the action itself. How long it took, etc. So that's the second timeline. We had been waiting for an hour when the bus arrived. Yeah, so this is in the past, when the bus arrived. But before that, you had been waiting for an hour. We had been waiting for an hour when the bus arrived. And in Dutch you could say that sounds rather awkward, so we wouldn't say that, but we waren al een half uur aan het wachten geweest. We waren al een uur aan het wachten geweest toen de bus aankwam. Waren geweest, is past perfect. Yeah. We had been waiting for an hour when the bus arrived. So continuous action, the waiting is continuous. Before another past action, when the bus arrived, and you're emphasizing time. This is really long, an hour. And again here, as with the past perfect simple, this is the same rule. We also use the past perfect continuous to give reasons for past actions or feelings. She had been putting the children to bed. That's why she looked tired. So she looked tired because she had been putting the children to bed. In this case, there's no difference between she had put the children to bed and she had been putting the children to bed. Both can be used to give reasons for past actions or feelings. So there's two rules you need to learn from the past perfect continuous. We use the past perfect continuous to talk about continuing past actions before another past action or time. And you're emphasizing time. And the second rule is to give reasons for past actions or feelings, which will then be in the past simple. Yeah, so remember the past perfect simple, we had two rules. Earlier actions in the past, to give reasons, is the second one. The past perfect continuous has two rules to talk about continuing past actions before another past action, emphasizing time, and the second one to give reasons as well. Yeah? Any questions? No questions? In that case, here's a review exercise which I copied from the book. I think it's page 104, I don't remember exactly. Okay, I'd like you to do this exercise. I'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes to do this exercise and then we'll look at the answers. Okay, let's discuss the answers. I had breakfast quite early. Let's pay attention for a few more minutes. I had breakfast quite early, then I went to the bus stop and caught the bus. These are consecutive actions, remember? Actions that follow each other. I had breakfast first, straight after, then I went to the bus stop, and then I caught the bus. So these actions rapidly follow each other, and that's why we don't use the past perfect here for earlier actions, because they follow each other straight away. We use the past simple. Yeah? So one action after another. And then you don't use the past perfect, but the past simple. We missed part of the concept because it had started when we got to the whole. This is giving reasons. Why did you miss part of the concept? Because it had started. Also, had started first, and then you missed it. Then you get to the whole. Sorry. Sorry. Question here.
Is it past perfect simple?
Is it what?
Past perfect simple.
What else could it be? Oh yeah, it's past perfect simple. Yeah, it's not continuous because there's no ing, right? It's only continuous when there's ing at the end. Tony hadn't been working in China for long before the earthquake happened. This one's easy. Hadn't working and hadn't been worked obviously are not correct, but this book was written for people with different language backgrounds. It's not the kind of mistake we would make in Dutch, but people with other language backgrounds would. But also we can say here, he hadn't been working in China for long before the earthquake happened. The earthquake happened, but before that, he had been working in China, right? So this is an earlier action, and also you focus on the action itself, on the work, and that's why it's continuous. We had visited all the museums in the town by the end of the tour. All the museums, and by the end of the tour, emphasizes this is finished. You've visited all the museums. You want to say this is finished. You don't want to focus on the action. You want to say this is finished. And that's why you say we had visited, not we had been visiting. If you say we had been visiting, then you don't want to say it's finished, so then you couldn't say all the museums. But you wanted to say that this was really hard and it took a long time. But that's not what you want to say. You want to say by the end of the tour, we'd visited all the museums, finished, done, over. That's why I say had visited, past perfect. Simple, not continuous. Yeah? Sorry I shouted at you. I was annoyed because I had been having problems with the computer all morning. Had been having because you're saying all morning. All morning. So the morning was over when you shouted. And that's why you say had been having. You couldn't say was having here, because then you couldn't say all morning. Because all morning, de hele morgen, implies the morning was over when you shouted. I had been having problems and then you shouted. Yeah? Okay, if you find this still rather confusing, then rewatch this lecture and also my previous lecture on the present perfect simple and continuous, which I think was lecture 6 in the last block. Have another look. And even if you were here, then rewatch it again. Study the material in the book very closely, do the exercises, and here is the homework.